Uh, Hello, this is Benjamin Fulford speaking on August 25th, 2022. I've been in Canada for a month now at my cottage north of Ottawa, and I've been, in contact with intelligence types here. And there was talk of setting up a rebel government in Idaho and announcing a United States of North America and starting a battle to liberate the occupied parts of the United States, which are, the main problems now are Silicon Valley, New York, and the CNN headquarter complex around Atlanta, Georgia. However, after more consultations with intelligence types around the world, we decided that it's still too early to actually start a civil war in the United States and North America. The reason for this is because this is not just an American problem. Uh, this is something that is affecting the entire planet. And so any solution has to involve China, etc. That something very big is about to be announced. That's why we've been asked on the move in Idaho. Now, I know a lot of patriots and Christians want Donald Trump to come in there and drain the swamp, which is something that's definitely desirable, but uh, it needs to be done worldwide. And that's why we're waiting to see what happens. Now, the big thing that we need to look upon is that um, next week, uh, Pope Francis, or the rubber mask wearing man who speaks for the people who control the Roman papacy at present, are having the first meeting in the 9.5 years since Francis was put into power of all the world's cardinals. And just before that meeting, Pope Francis is going to select 100 or 21 new cardinals. So out of the 128 cardinals total, 101 were appointed by Francis. And some, all the Vatican people are saying there's some big, huge announcement that's going to take place. Now, the rumor has it there's two possibilities. One is that the cabal behind the Pope and the World Economic Forum are going to try to fool the world once again with another Obama type figure by having an African Pope. It won't be a genuine African Pope. It'll be an African slave pretending to be a Pope of color, to try to fool the people of the world into once again supporting the cabal that uses Vatican as its control nexus. Now, the other important thing is that Vatican has announced that they are um, taking control over the Vatican Bank, the Institute of Religious Works, they call it. But the point is that they're cutting off all private banks. That means Swiss banks. That means Italian banks. In other words, they're removing the Rothschilds and these people from control of the Vatican Bank. Now, the Vatican Bank, for those of you who know, is something that has been used to control the so-called world leaders we see gathering at the UN. When a person is elected president or prime minister, or whatever, they receive a visit from a representative of the Vatican Bank. They're given a passbook with large amounts of money, billions if you're from a big country, hundreds of millions if you're from a smaller country, uh, and they say, "Welcome to the club of rich people," and you're welcome to have this money for your personal use, but if you disobey us, we're going to kill you. So this is a very important thing that the control of this thing is being taken away from the Rothschild family. Now, I believe this is very closely linked to the entire COVID scam. Uh, the reason I believe this is because what's been happening is that most of the rest of the world is refusing to accept fiat money created out of nothing by the Federal Reserve Board, which is controlled by the Khazarian mafia, who controls the Vatican as well. And what that means is that they haven't been able to print money and buy oil. And they have been able to print money and use it to goose the U.S. stock markets. But that policy has reached a kind of a dead end. It's created incredible gaps between the 0.01% who own most of the stocks and the average person. It's creating inflation and hyperinflation. In other words, they've reached a dead end there too. They cannot launder more money through the stock market without causing more economic chaos, more inflation. So they've reached a dead end. And what they did, we've now figured out one of the main reasons behind this entire fake pandemic and COVID business. It turns out that it was a giant money laundering operation. They they found a way to print their funny money and get it into the world's political system. So around the world, using the World Bank and other such institutions, they have bribed government leaders with huge amounts of money with investments in vaccine companies, in mask companies, and PCR testing, and so as well as advertising. So they pumped about $1 trillion into the world economy using their control of the Western medical system. That now has also blown up in their faces, as is being widely reported elsewhere. The adverse reactions to this so-called vaccine are going through the roof. People are dying, uh, and they realize that war crimes trials are now a matter of time. That's why Anthony Fauci has suddenly announced he's going to resign, but it's too late for that rat to abandon the sinking ship. So we're going to wait for this announcement next week. Let's see what comes out of the Vatican. But if not, right now there was talk of me staying in North America to fight from here. I'm still not sure. I might go back to Japan because I still think that there's a crucial battle in Asia that needs to take place. In other words, China needs to be liberated from the Chinese Communist Party and return to native rule. I believe that President Xi Jinping supports this, and there will be fundamental change in China. But in any case, as things stand, Europe and the United States, under the present regimes, are not going to be able to continue economically through the winter. It's been widely reported, and I've written about it many times, but Europe is not going to have enough gas or oil to get through the winter. They've been unable to secure supplies. That's why people like Macron are saying, oh, the rich days are over. We're going to face hardship. Same with the leaders of Germany, Spain, etc. They're all saying, we're headed for a cliff. Well, no kidding. You haven't been paying your bills for 40 years. What do you expect? And on the United States, they've already used half of their strategic petroleum reserve. 1 out of 6 Americans cannot pay their electricity bills because the price has gone up 47% since a year ago. Uh, and in other words, the United States does not have enough oil to go through the winter, neither does Europe. And we're also in touch with the secret Space Force people. I think they are the ones who are carrying out weather warfare. When I see the phrase once in 500 years referring to a weather event, I always see that as a sign that weather warfare is at work. And now we're seeing reports of once in 500-year droughts in China, with rivers like the Yangtze drying up and ancient Buddhist statues appearing. We have Lake Mead in California drying up and bodies appearing from the lake bottom. We have rivers in Europe and Germany drying up with the ancient stone warning saying if the water falls this far, beware. I find it very difficult to believe that China, the U.S., and EU are all facing once in 500-year droughts all at once without some kind of weather warfare being at work. So something big is happening. And that's why I've held back on making moves in Canada so far. However, The Canadian military need to understand that Canadian democracy has been sabotaged by a group of bribed criminal people working who have been bribed by the World Economic Forum, stole the last election using electronic voting, who illegally installed Justin Castro as prime minister, who has been trying his damnedest to turn Canada into a communist totalitarian state. Canadians, you know, don't put up with a lot of BS, and they're basically, ignoring this attempt. The most they've been able to do is cause trouble with the people at airports at this point. But I've been walking around Canadian streets, and people aren't using their masks, and they're waking up. And Trudeau or Castro is so reviled, he cannot appear in public. So that man, he's doomed, uh, for sure. And the problem is, though, there is some kind of leadership vacuum right now in the Anglo-Saxon world, and until that's resolved, it's going to be events in the rest of the world that are going to force the hand of everybody in the West. That's how things stand now. Uh, Now, I realize that there's a big move for Donald Trump to be returned to power. An opinion poll I just read show that 64% of Americans want this, 30% are against. In U.S. politics, that's pretty big. So, you know, I think that as things stand, he needs to come back, but he needs to, when he does that, he needs to explain why he said the things he did on vaccines, or if it was someone else pretending to be him saying that. Because for him to promote vaccines when his own son was vaccine damaged doesn't make sense. So we're assuming this was a fake Trump putting out propaganda designed to undermine support for the real Trump. But we know at this point it's the Christian heartland that's going to liberate the United States. And at the same time, they need to understand that the Vatican, the center of so-called world Christianity, is not run by Christians. These people, I've met them. They're Zoroastrians at the best. Believe in an eternal fight between good and evil, and they believe that they are God and they control this planet, and that is something that has to end. They're very reluctant to do so, but right now there is an international boycott against them. It's just a matter of time as things go. So um, we're going to wait until we see what the Vatican does with this big meeting and if they make a move or not. Uh, I was told a lot of things that haven't come true. The Dragon family told me that the Pope Francis would meet with representatives of the White Dragon Society when he came to Canada. This did not happen. Uh, and these people are so arrogant. I don't know if they really are ready to give up. However, people need to understand the current system that they run for the world economy is destroying nature and is destroying human life. Every country they control has negative population growth. Okay, people don't want to have children under G7 regimes. They're going around promoting all sorts of sex that doesn't produce children, like sex with robots and dolls, um, various types of, anyway, non reproductive sex. It's fine. People want to have fun, that's good. But at the end of the day,
Less text now. Less text and
all
more
the
words.
countries controlled by the G7, which are mostly, with the exception of Japan, European, are suffering population declines. And what we want now is we want a baby boom. We want an economic boom. We want a whole new age to begin. They're suppressing technology. They're trying to create, according to the Russians, they are trying to create two types of human beings: a ruling class who will have life prolonging drugs and live to hundreds of years, and the slave class who will be genetically modified to be subservient forever. This is what they are trying to establish. They were hoping to set up some kind of world capital in the Ukraine. They built a giant synagogue of Satan there, which they were planning to use for their headquarters. The fact that they're losing that war, the fact that they're losing the economic war, and that the whole world is turning their back on them means something is going to give. So I'm gonna wait and see. I'll probably go back to Japan but if necessary, I will fly to Idaho to join the rebel forces in the liberation of North America. But I think right now that may not be necessary. That it might happen at a world level, and that's why I think maybe going back to Asia is the answer. I'm waiting and seeing for more information from the intelligence agencies, but it looks like you know everything is falling apart for them. And the last thing we have to worry about is that now that their pandemic card is blown up, they only have one left, as far as I can tell, and that's Project Bluebeam. And I'm hearing more and more stories about some scary aliens, appearing in the press. That's not aliens, okay? That's humans using technology they have monopolized and kept from us, including anti gravity. It's not real. I mean, it's real, but it's not alien real. Uh, so watch out for that. But let's see what happens next week at the Vatican, and then I think the long summer stalemate is going to end. We're going to see some pretty big moves, one way or the other, this autumn. And I'm glad I rested well, and I'm sorry to have, been skimp on the coverage during the summer, but I really do need to charge my batteries because there's a lot going to happen in the next couple of weeks and months. Well, that's what I have to say for myself. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. It has been reported that Brigadier General Curtis Taylor, commanding officer of California's Fort Irwin and a former White Hat, had recently denounced the Constitution as an obsolete document and sworn allegiance to Joseph Biden, proclaiming his troops were at the ready to defend the administration from domestic threats. If backed by the federal government, he probably has enough manpower and firepower to wage a small war. How can the United States military act in unison when high-ranking traitors such as General Taylor is under the command of the Khazari Mafia?
I think the important thing for the U.S. military to do is to hire some forensic accountants and find out a list of all generals who have large amounts of money that can't explain where they got it from. Okay, because you can be sure that any general who's supporting the fake regime of Joe Biden has been bribed or blackmailed or both. So what they need to do is they need to find, uh, you know, generals who actually only accept their military paycheck and therefore live a middle class lifestyle, and fire all generals who have large sums of money they can't explain where they got it from. I believe that's where the answer lies in terms of cleaning up the U.S. military. Next question.
In an old message from last week's video, you told us you will work to arrest Trudeau when you are in Canada. What have you done as far as that, and is that still ongoing?
I have talked to MI6 about that. There is talk about replacing Trudeau, but I think the answer I got was first they have to get a new prime minister in Britain. Apparently, that's going to be Elizabeth Truss, who's had some pretty um, you know cabal pro cabal statements. She's made a lot of nasty comments. However, my understanding is that the UK is under some kind of military government and that she'll be reading a new script. But anyway, the answer I got back was that first they got to get someone new installed in England, then they'll deal with Castro or Trudeau. But I will call the Canadian military and make sure that they understand that democracy has been destroyed in Canada by a communist group controlled by the World Economic Forum, and that something needs to be done about it. Next question.
Is it your position that Trump accelerated the COVID clot shot because he was shortening the enemy's OODA loop, or do you believe that he is complicit?
I think the jury is out on that. My best understanding is that after January of 2020, the person appearing to be Trump was actually an actor, and that the real Trump went to the Mount Cheyenne military base, uh, to escape the occupation of Washington D.C. But the jury is still out on that. We'd like to see Trump speak about that in public, the real Trump. But that needs to be clarified. You cannot be president of the United States while pushing vaccines that are causing damage to people for a pandemic that was manufactured by the same people. Next question.
A comment from a viewer. I'm starting to lose hope that the good people will not win out. We are in a hybrid war. Military action is only one of several power vectors. Maybe the militaries will act and maybe they won't, but who or what group is tracking the impact of their delays, much less acting to address other theaters such as food, medical, weather control, water suppression, technology, and as well as powerful as the media can be?
I think what people need to understand in the West is that they are under an occupied regime. They are being fed lies and propaganda through their corporate media, and that the situation. Uh, well, I've been looking at grocery stores. At least here, everything seems okay. I don't see shortages of food and stuff. But yeah, the gasoline prices are high, and that's hurting a lot of people, and that's going to feed into the economy. But what people need to understand about this is that it's not something that can be solved just by military action. So suppose the military white hats go in and they fire everybody in Washington D.C., which I believe they already did once, and announce the military government. They still have to deal with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is going to repeat the message. You haven't been paying your bills for 40 years now, and you've been carrying out wars and destruction all around the planet. That needs to end. And at that point, the finger goes beyond the United States, points at people around Switzerland and the Vatican, who are the Roman Empire. They were trying to create a world government with a single dictator at the top, and it's these people at the end of the day that need to be dealt with, and that is happening on a global level. The entire world is moving to do something, and that's why we're going to let's see what happens at this big Vatican meeting. We're going to give them that little window, but then if they try to come up with a fake African pope and try to carry on as if they're still going to be in power forever, then some heavy moves will have to be made, including military. Next question.
We have our last question here today. So, obviously, a stalemate occurred. Was that about crashing the euro and the dollar? And in any case, how long is the dollar likely to last? Are all the white hats on board now? And what seems to be the plan going forward?
Well, my understanding is that the dollar is strong because it's not controlled by the Americans. The reason the dollar is strong is because they have not been making new dollars for many years now. The dollars that are being pumped out in the United States to boost the stock market and stuff are not accepted internationally. So, in other words, the dollar is tied to a basket of commodities and they stop making new dollars. That's why the dollar is strong, but it's not an American currency. It's not controlled by the American people or the American government. You need to understand that when talking about all this. Okay? Uh, Now, what's the game plan? My understanding is that the plan is to replace the UN and the international organizations set up after World War II with something that actually represents the people of planet Earth, that is democratic, and that control of finance and control of the process of deciding what we as a species do in the future will be taken away from a cabal of religious fanatics who believe in end times and some kind of world dictatorship by a single clan to something that actually belongs to the people, the planet Earth. So that's the plan. That's why we're waiting for this big Vatican meeting. We're hoping that they're going to do something. But if not, then what will happen is European and American economies will crash during the winter. There will be a lot of hardship and a lot of chaos until the regime there collapses. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see next week. I'll probably be doing this back from Japan again, but I'll be making some phone calls to make sure this is the right move. But right now, it looks like the the battle for China may be more important than the battle for the U.S., and that's why I may have to go back to Asia. All right, see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.